Oh yeah, buddy.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In the last video, we got my 1985 4Runner back on the road for its very first time in the 6 months that I've owned it. It has spent the last half a year sitting in my garage being worked on, and we finally got to drive this thing, so that was really exciting. If you missed that video, definitely go back and check it out. Just because I drove this thing does not mean that it is finished. There is still a ton of work that needs to be done. I got piles of parts all over my garage still. I still need to pass emissions, as well as a couple other things that I have figured out over the last week of driving this that I would like to get taken care of. So in this video, we're going to be doing a bunch of random things, odds and ends, trying to get this thing buttoned up. I have this other first-gen axle laying down here that is already built and ready for a 3-link. So we'll just go ahead and talk about that for a second. I bought this axle when I bought the truck from another buddy that had a first-gen. And basically the goal with this one, at some point, it's going to be 3-linked. So I'm going to swap over high steer from this axle on the ground here onto the truck. But to do so, I need to chop off the old shock towers, reinforce the frame rail, get the new shock towers thrown back on, and then I did get an IFS steering box from a 91 pickup, which is sitting right there. It's already got the good pitman arm that I want on there. Just needs to be drilled and tapped for steering assist. Also, I got an Elocker harness. This is a standalone harness. The axle in my first gen at the moment is a 2001 Tacoma axle with a Elocker. So that is the same axle essentially that's in the third gen 4Runner. And yeah, we got an Elocker harness, so I'm going to get that thrown in the truck. I'm going to finish doing the switch panel, even though I won't be putting lights or anything on there. I do want to get that taken care of, so we're going to get that done. There is one more fun project that I have planned for the day, or this weekend at least, is getting a panel built for the tailgate. I didn't have one when I got the truck, and I have this old school sign laying around. It's almost perfect dimensions. It's a little bit longer than it needs to be, and what I haven't cut out of it is pretty much exactly what I need to cut a panel out. So we will be getting that done as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and set up the camera and get into doing some work. All right, I've made a little progress. I got the locker harness ran from the rear axle up underneath of the truck. It pops out where the old heater core used to come through the body, basically underneath my center console, and then runs along through the center console. The switch wire is still sitting over on the floorboard, but then the rest of it comes up through the passenger floorboard and out the firewall, comes out under the switch panel, and basically into this mess of wires. I didn't show you guys me throwing in the switch panel. I did that last week off film, and it's actually not wired in. It's just kind of mounted, and then the wires are routed, but nothing's actually plugged in. So I made a bracket. It's basically a 90-degree L bracket that comes off the body and then has a little platform that I made out of a sign, and that is just coming off of the inside of the firewall. Mounted my switch panel to it, and then got everything, like I said, roughly routed in there, all the power supply, ACC, and then the actual panel inside of the cab. If you're familiar, the Elocker has 3 wires that come up through the firewall, and one of them being a ground, one of them is the main power, and then the other one is an ACC power, so your little locker light will basically light up when you engage the locker. I opted to basically combine the ACC wire from my Elocker with the ACC plug-in through the switch panel. So anytime I turn the key on, I'll have power to the switch panel, power to the Elocker, etc. Anytime I turn the key off, ACC power dies, that light on the locker turns off, and then the basically controllability for the switch panel turns off as well. That is how I have it wired in the third gen. I've had good luck with that. I've never really needed to use any of this stuff with the truck off. So really not a big deal. Anyways, that stuff's all boring. That's why I didn't really do too much in-depth of filming. Wiring is tedious and really not that exciting. So I'm doing my best to make everything look as pretty as I can. It's pretty hard once you start throwing a ton of wires in these trucks. There's already wires everywhere anyways. So trying to keep everything tucked into that corner, combined all of the power wires that I can with, you know, whatever factory wires are already running through here, as well as if I have slack in wires, I've just kind of been bunching them up and stuffing them places. So like the loomed wire that comes with the aux beam switch panel, this thing is so long. There's like 8 extra feet of wire that I don't need. So I just bundled it all up, put a bunch of zip ties around it, and stuffed it underneath of there. And I should never need that space, so it kind of works out great. Anyways, I don't have a button for the Elocker. I bought this Elocker from a buddy off Instagram. It's a low range off-road, low pinion Elocker, standalone harness. So what that means is I can turn that locker on whenever I want. That's good and bad. It tends to work a little bit better than the factory harness does. But if you were to hit that locker while you're driving down the highway, it will engage, and that will cause some damage. So that's never happened, but it's possible. I don't have the switch to turn the locker off and on, so I'm looking for one of those, and if I can't find one, I'm going to try to wire the E-locker into the switch panel, which would be ideal. Saves me space on the dash, and then everything's in one place. But like I said, I have all the same stuff in the 3rd gen, and I never figured that one out. But anyways, E-locker is pretty much ran. It's not done, but hard part's done anyways. I was driving this thing the other day, and it has a little bit of a squeal to it, and it started to do it in my garage when it was idling. And after looking into some forums and whatnot, I think that the idler bearing, basically the bearing in this top pulley right there, is probably just getting a little old. And I think that's where that noise is coming from. I'm not 100% positive, but it's like 17 bucks, and I guarantee you that thing hasn't been changed, so we'll probably swap that thing out as well. But I'm not going to lie, I'm feeling lazy. It's hot outside, and I think I'm going to go and skate and kind of enjoy my day off instead of working on this truck, so... I just got a phone call from Callus. Some of you will remember him. He's got the green 3rd gen that goes out wheeling with me pretty often. He just called me and his lower ball joint broke on his driver's side of the truck, but he got really lucky and it broke when he pulled into his parking lot of his apartment complex. So I sent him photos just for fun to show him how bad it could have been. But at the moment, he's out of a car and it's Saturday. I'm going to go over to the parts store. I'm going to go to the Toyota dealership, pick up some ball joints for him. So a little bit of a detour in the plan of what I had going on this weekend. But that's all right. We're going to get his truck fixed up. I'm going to go ahead and load the 1st gen full of all my tools. And we're going to go fix Callus's truck and get him back on the road. A little bit of a different idea than what I had for the weekend, but we're going to go do that instead. I'm really hoping that all that broke on his truck is the ball joint. He sent me a bunch of photos and videos, but it's kind of hard to tell. Let me get my work truck loaded up. Also, I haven't used this in any of my videos yet, but people have commented in the past that I've been doing lug nuts and everything by hand, and I finally went to a pawn shop and bought some Milwaukee stuff. And this is my favorite purchase that I've ever bought. It's a 1/2-inch Milwaukee Impact. Should make the job a little easier.
Well, maybe my engagement ring would be up there.
You know how it is, baby. I gotta buy tools so I can afford more stuff. You guys get it. Take it back. This thing's definitely cooler than the Impact. Fucking trust test on this tailgate. Made it over to Callus's. Got the 1st gen loaded down with all the goodies. see the damage, dude.
Pretty good.
It could have been so much worse, though.
Literally happened as I was pulling into the spot right here. All I heard was a little snap sound, and I just like fell down. And I look under, and then, oh yeah, buddy.
So yeah, most of you guys that have 4Runners and whatnot and are familiar with this is the luckiest, best case scenario that's ever happened with a lower ball joint failure. He almost made it into a parking space and his tire didn't fold under his truck. So easy enough. I'm gonna get the truck unloaded. I got the jack and jack stands and new ball joints and all that. Get this thing situated and get it fixed. Progress. We got one lower ball joint swapped out. Took maybe like 10 minutes. The other one didn't fail yet, but we got 2 new ones anyways. So we're gonna spin the truck around and clean up our mess a little bit, swap the other one out, and then we'll be back on the road, baby. Back in business. Callus's truck is back on its own 4 wheels here. He's gonna blow it up. He should be good to go, and I'm going to race my ass back home so I don't get poured on. But as of right now, it's raining, so about to get wet.
The next day.
When we left Holy Cross, the truck started smoking going down the highway, and we pulled over and checked everything out. I ended up smashing a brake line. Got it pretty good. Right there, she's pancaked. So what that did, at least what I'm assuming that did, was lock up my shoes in the drum and overheated the brakes. It started smoking. That whole drum assembly got so hot that it smoked the axle seal and then started spraying gear oil all over the place. So I ended up having to drive all the way home going like 40 miles an hour. And it was very stressful because I was like an hour and a half away from home. But obviously we made it. The truck is safe. Made it to the parts store, and now I'm going to take this wheel off, pull everything apart, and see if I can't get it swapped out. Luckily, I have a second brake line assembly from a different axle. So hoping that that thing will work. I'm pretty sure it's from the same axle, and I hope I bought the right axle seal. Got the axle pulled, and it fried more than the axle seal. The wheel bearing exploded. There was a little bit of remnants sitting in here, but I do think the axle seal kept most of it from going inside of the housing. So I'm gonna get a flashlight down in there, make sure we're good to go, get this seal pulled, get the new one in, and we'll go from there. Roached the wheel speed sensor. Here's my donor axle and assembly. I gotta get this thing cleaned up. Wheel bearing's definitely not ideal. There's some movement in it, but this thing is exploded, so it's a lot better than what was in there. Even the teeth on this gear are absolutely shredded. I got the axle housing cleaned up. There was definitely a couple little scuff marks around where the seal would seat, so I took a Dremel, cleaned everything up as best I could, and it's nice and smooth in here now. Fingers crossed that that seals, because I don't have any more rear axle housings laying around. Gonna get this one cleaned up, slap her back in there. Gotta get the seal thrown in there, obviously, and then we'll start swapping out the brake line. All right, I went to go ahead and throw the e-brake linkage back on, even though I don't have an e-brake at the moment, and I threw the wrong axle housing back in. I'm not sure where I got these housings and what they're from. They're definitely from the same axle, but different year. But basically, the linkage is up high when the ones on this axle are down low. Being in the wrong place, it doesn't allow me to get my wheel speed sensor back into the axle. I have the correct one, it just doesn't have the drum on it, so I thought I was further than I am. I'm gonna go ahead and clean this other one up, pull this out, put the other one in, and then I'll have to transfer over all the drum and all that, which does suck. I have to pull this other assembly apart to swap out all of the brake shoe stuff over to this one. So, hooray. But I did get the new brake line on, so that's a plus. I gave up on the third gen after working on it for quite a few hours last night. I ran into a couple hiccups that I was not expecting to run into. Coming home, I thought that those would just pop right in and it would be a quick repair, and I was wrong. Nothing's ever that easy. So what I did today was went and picked up an entire another axle. I didn't necessarily need a whole nother axle, but I did get the axle shafts with the correct housings. So now all I have to do is pull the axles out of the third gen. I'm gonna pop these ones in, or at least the one that's broken, and then I'll have spares laying around that are the correct replacements for this axle. It'll just make things a little bit quicker and easier than swapping out brakes and shoes, seeing as that I'm putting old parts on anyways. The axle housing is an Elocker housing, which will come in handy when I go to throw this Elocker in Callus's truck. That way I won't have to retrofit his non-Elocker housing. It's just a good deal. And I'm starting to hoard parts. I got axles all over the place. There's more in my shed out back. It's starting to rain. I'm going to try to knock this out and then take it to the car wash and try to get this gear oil off of everything, because I drove about an hour with it shooting gear oil all over the place. Boom, we got a truck again. I got the axle swapped out, brakes are on. I probably still need to bleed the brakes, realistically. Lastly, I need to top the axle back off with some gear oil, so that's what I'm gonna do real quick before I clean any of this stuff up. I also was able to pull an ABS sensor, or a wheel speed sensor, off of this other axle. Honestly, getting this axle housing was probably the best thing that I could have done. Truck drives perfectly normal again, except that the brake pedal goes all the way to the floor. Kind of to be expected. I pulled the entire rear hardline off yesterday, and then it sat like that overnight. So still need to bleed the brakes, but third gen is back in business. Now that that thing is fixed, then I can drive that thing to and from work and start getting back to work on the first gen. Bought a couple more parts for that yesterday. Went and got the Skies Off-Road front leaf spring hanger, and then the IFS plates, and the rest of all of the hardware and brackets there. My garage is an absolute mess right now, so I'm gonna spend some time kind of rearranging and finding places to put all these spare parts. I got enough rear axles for like 3 trucks. Unfortunately, pretty much all these axles need wheel bearings put on them, but that's for another day.